Hello everyone, I am Nu-Trix the Synth guy, and today we're talking about another soft synthesizer from the company Cherry Audio. This time it's called Sines. Now, when you look at the name and you look at the software, you go, okay, it's a 4-oscillator sine wave device. FM synthesis, sine wave, okay, it's an FM synth. Yes and no. It can do FM. It can be a 4-operator synthesizer of FM synthesis if you want to, but it can do so much more. It has 4 oscillators, yes, but they're not limited to sine for real. They are, but you can, with each of them, create square, sawtooth, and many different waveform because there's so many options of shaping that it becomes really powerful. It has a filter. It can be a low pass, high pass. So again, the same richness of the sound that they offer in all of the Cherry Audio synthesizer. There's 4 LFOs, and you can assign it to whatever. And they're really flexible because they're not just going up and down. They're going up or down. You'll see. You'll see what I'm talking about. And there's the arpeggiator, and there's a bunch of effects, delay, distortion, reverb, chorus, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a really cool synth, but honestly, the most powerful part of it is the modulation matrix. It is amazingly powerful, and the sources and destination and all that stuff is really intricate and interesting. So yes, it's FM, but it's so much more. Let's go and look into how to make sound with the Cherry Audio Sines. So you see what I'm doing. Like every other Cherry Audio synthesizer, at the bottom you got a keyboard, you've got the modulation wheel, the pitch band, control of the octave, the depth of the pitch band, and a glide amount. So that stuff is standard. You have an arpeggiator, classic stuff, classic ways of arpeggiate. You got the octave, you got the fact up, down, up and down, key order or the random, the rate and the hold and all that stuff. So key assign, this is where you assign, do you want to have max voice, 16, 8, whatever. So of course, the more voices you put, the harder it is on the CPU. So if you take a sound that is a unison sound with, it's going to take much more CPU, even if it's just this, because now I'm actually playing 16 voices. Whereas if I go, I just want to play 1, 3. Right away, it's a lot less demanding than if I go. You get the logic. So let's put it back to 8 for now. You get distortion, modulation effect. You've got delay, different type of delays. You get reverb. You even have access to the galactic reverb of Cherry Audio. Now let's go back to the nitty-gritty of making sound with Sines. You have, if you click on focus, you're gonna have a close-up of the synthesizer. On this side, you have LFO 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're exactly the same. And they don't have to be assigned to oscillator 1, 2, 3, and 4. They can be assigned to anywhere you want. If you look at, let's say here, the frequency, you've got source at the top. If you click on source, you're going to have access to the different sources of modulation. So LFO 1 to 4. So everywhere you see source, you also have LFO 1 to 4. So 1 does not have to be linked to oscillator 1. It can be assigned to anything. Now, just for the fun of it, you also have envelopes. You have the filter envelope, the amp envelope, and 2 other envelopes that are assignable to whatever you want. You have oscillators, of course. So the oscillator themselves can become sources of modulation. FM modulation, anyone? Keyboard, you've got the modulation wheel, you've got the pitch band, the velocity, you've got the CV, basically the notes you're playing, the channel pressure, the polyphonic aftertouch, the arpeggiator itself. So these are all sources of modulation, and you get signals. These are kind of more of this, I would say, modular approach where you have a white noise generator or a pink noise generator or random DC poly DC, random PDC, and plus 10 volt DC. So these are sources of modulation. And then when it's a sine, then you just select how much you want to have. Now, if you want to go back to 0, you double click, you press 0 and enter, you're back to 0. Okay, so let's actually take the LFO1 and just for the fun of it, assign it to, let's say, the pitch here. Okay, let's assign it to LFO1 pitch, and you hear the modulation. Something that is interesting is that the LFO here has two ways of working. Up, so it only happens higher than the original sound or the original value, and down, which is only lower. So the visual also tells you that. It's very clear on what this is doing. And then if you click the go back to normal, it's going to go back and forth between the two of them. The waveform, there's a bunch of them, really cool, like Sawtooth, for example. And what you can do also, which is interesting, is you can actually have a one shot. So it means that it's going to do the movement once. So it's almost like having another envelope, just attack and decay, you know? So think of the LFO in a much wider sense than just cyclic modulation. It can be just a envelope modulation if you want. And there's this little thing here, which is interesting, is a source. Right now it's LFO1, but it's via. So via what? I could say via keyboard modulation wheel. So when I bring up the modulation wheel, it does the modulation. And if I bring it down, it stops. So that's kind of weird, but you get the logic is when you push it, it becomes, it could be, let's say we try a triangular, say like this. Too slow. Let's make it something faster. Okay, so that's the logic, is you can then control the amount of the source on the destination with another control. So it doesn't have, I mean, right now I'm using the modulation wheel, but it could be, I'm using another LFO, you know? So. As little, it becomes more. So it's kind of weird, but you get the logic. It's really interesting, this powerful way of deciding how much something is being affected on something else by another modulator. It's kind of weird and fun, and it's a really cool, complex matrix of modulation. Let's bring it down to 0. Okay, we hear the sine wave. You got the pitch. Got something called ratio. Now, ratio, again, it rings a bell. It's kind of FM synthesis. Now, if you want to know more about FM synthesis, there's a video here that I made, or actually a bunch of videos that I made about FM synthesis. But basically, the ratio would be very interesting to use when you combine two oscillators together. One is modulating the first one, and the ratio of the modulator compared to the ratio of the carrier, if they're different, it creates different type of harmonics. So playing with it when you're modulating the two will give you a cool, well, different tone, basically. By itself, alone, it's just going to go higher in pitch. Okay? Then you have the feedback. Right away, again, FM synthesis. Feedback is something that an operator, which is called the name in FM of an oscillator, the operator can actually send the signal, the output back into itself, so it can feedback. In this case, if we do that, I'm going to move this a little bit. Look at the screen here to see the oscillator itself. If I bring this up, it becomes a sawtooth. Go the other way, it becomes another sawtooth. It's a really cool, rich sawtooth. So the sine wave can be a sine wave, but with the feedback, it can become a sawtooth. That's interesting. The phase, well, the phase is going to move it out. First is going to change the phase, so it's going to be kind of 180 degrees before or after. So by itself, it doesn't do much, but if you do it compared to other oscillators, it can create these little cool evolution of sounds. The width actually could be seen as a pulse width modulation, but in this case, it affects any sound. So it's not pulse width, it's just the width. So you're kind of changing the width of the sine wave, and it creates these weird shapes that you don't see often. And you have like this sound. And again, you can assign an LFO to this thing. Come on, and just do a little bit of... Really cool sound, and this is a sine wave with modulation, which is odd, but cool. Again, if we go with the feedback, we are kind of doing it for a triangular waveform. To create different types of shapes again. Really cool for creating the original, source that you're going to play with. Really, it's really fun. Now, if you want to do a square wave, I'm going to start distorting it a little bit, and I'm going to play with the wavefold. Not too much, and distorting it a little bit more, and shape it out like this. And if I play with that now, I have a really cool sounding sawtooth now. Square wave, sorry. Square wave. Okay, so really powerful, and of course you can do these classic waveform, but what's cool now is you can do all of these in-betweens. You can combine this, add some feedback to that, change the wavefold, bring down the drive. It creates these other shapes that you never saw before. And on top of that, you have a sub oscillator. And you have a super oscillator. So the super is 1 octave higher, and the sub is an octave lower. Now, when you have too much stuff happening like I have right now, you sometimes don't hear them. For the sub, you need to put headphones, because maybe if I go higher in pitch, you hear it now? So that's clear. And this one, so you have another octave higher playing. So it means that just the oscillator 1 can create a complex waveform plus a sub and a super. So it's like having 3 oscillators together playing. And then you've got 4 that are done like this. They're all made using all of this. So really powerful right away. And if you look at after that, it would go into the filter. But you have a control here to decide if you're going to bypass the filter or not. So you could assign only some sound to go through the filter and other oscillators not to go to the filter. It's your choice. You also have a utility, so you can copy the oscillator to another one. You can randomize the oscillator. You can reset the oscillator, so you got different options. You can solo it if you want to work only on one. And again, you have a control of source and modulation for the level, in this case, for the pan here. Okay? What else do we have? You have 4 envelopes, the filter, amp. These are dedicated envelopes. Envelope 3 and 4, they can be assigned to whatever you want. They're part of the source of modulation. Then you've got the filter. It's a low pass by default, but it can be also a high pass and band pass and a notch filter. And for all of them, you have control of cutoff frequency, the resonance, the envelope amount, of course, and the tracking. So the key tracking as you go up and down the keys, you want the filter to follow it. Pretty cool. Now, all of this is really cool. And the fact that you can create almost the shape of your oscillator is really interesting. I like that, really. But the modulation matrix here, it's just like, okay, you want to do other things. You did see stuff that you wanted to do, but it's not there. Now you can go in and say, okay, I'm going to take whatever envelope filter, and this is the via, but this is the destination. There's a lot more destination that you can have. So even the distortion, the modulation effects, the delay, the reverb, the EQ, the VCA, everything can be controlled almost from the sources that you have here. So really, really powerful. And if you want to do FM, you can. There's presets in there. You can say, well, I want to do a 4-2. So there's different ways that you can just go in and create your own sound. So it comes with 500 presets. I always like to try out the arpeggiators. Let's try basses. Let's say the classic bells of the tubular bells of the the DX. My first synthesizer was a DX21. That's the type of sound that I remember well. Brass sounds. Okay, pretty cool. Let's say growl. What do we have in the growl kind of thing? Oops, sorry, growl. That's some potential. That is cool. Okay, let's try some keys. That's it. That's the Cherry Audio Sines soft synth. Much, much more than just FM synthesis. So if you like it, check it out. See you next time. Stay safe. Make more music. Cheers, guys.